Yo, what is up, everybody? John from Tau Tactics here, bringing another video. Today we're going to be walking through how I deploy my Montka list on layouts 1, 2, and 6. I'm preparing for an upcoming GT here, and also how I take advantage of both using Darkstrider and the Strike Swiftly enhancements to gain some advantages in deployment, help protect my resources, but also potentially take aggressive lines. I'm also going to walk through, how I deploy in order, like which units specifically, so I can again gain more information on my opponent because I typically have more drops than them, so I can see where their damage dealers are going down before I put mine on, etc. But before we hop into today's video, I want to give a shout out to our channel sponsor, Secondhand Geek. I'm sure you're familiar with them by now, but if you aren't, they are an online marketplace for wargamers like you and me. They charge a fraction of other online marketplaces as far as fees are concerned, so you'll see that reflected in the price, but it's just as secure as using something like eBay, for example, without that premium price point. As you can see, they support both Warhammer 40k, but tons of other games, terrain, etc. I recently saw they posted a really awesome Tau army. It's essentially a full auxiliary cadre army, painted to tabletop standard plus, as you can see here. It's got the 15 rampagers, the 9 Krutox riders, so you can basically run the guerrilla list immediately. So just something cool that I saw. But without further ado, let's hop right into today's video. So as far as deployment is concerned, the first thing you're going to want to do as a Tau player in deployment is identify where you're going to deploy your Pathfinder. So no matter if you go first or second, the Pathfinders are going to be the first unit that you deploy. Now the reason why is because the way infiltration works is you cannot actually deploy these Pathfinders within 9 inches of your opponent, and it works for them as well, vice versa. So when I'm going first, what I want to do, and what I'm using Darkstrider to do here, is to be able to deploy my Pathfinders aggressively without the risk of potentially losing them super early. Now, the reason I could do this is because Darkstrider actually has the Scout 7 ability himself. In the core rules, if a unit that's embarked within a dedicated transport has all of the models within it have the Scout ability, it confers that to the dedicated transport. So Darkstrider, by being alone in this Devilfish, is giving it Scout 7. So what I've done here is I have pre-measured where this Devilfish is actually going to end up, and I've then created a bubble of 10 inches around my Pathfinders. So why 10 inches? Because a scout move is technically a normal move, which means that I can embark within a transport using the scout move. So as long as I end within 3 with their 7-inch scout move, I can then embark within the transport. So what I've done is taken up as much space as I possibly could with those 10 inches, so I can take advantage of that infiltrate blocking ability if I do end up going first. Next, as far as what I'm going to deploy, like the next unit in order, it's going to be these Vespid, because they don't ever do anything turn 1 other than go up. Next is going to be these the Stealth Suit units and the Kroot, so the Kroot will go next. What I want to do here is eventually get them to a natural and hopefully sticky it after I sticky this, and potentially screen out this part of the table. Next, I'm going to put my Stealth Suits. I always put them in these 3 spots in layout 1. The reason being is they nicely cover different angles. So one thing that I always do with Stealth Suits, for example, is I always measure what 9 inches gets me with them, because that is the minimum distance that they can go and still guide. Because they have marker drones on all of my Stealth Suits, I can advance and guide with them. So I know that I can cover this angle down here, and I can cover this angle down here as well. With this Stealth Suit unit can get to here or here and guide down this narrow line, and then these Stealth Suits can again guide down this line, or they can go down the middle as well. Next, what I want to do is identify where I'm going to put my Scout 6 enhancement on this Cadre Fireblade. So the reason I put this Devilfish here is because I pre-measured before the game where the terrain overlaps, so I know if I am behind this line, then that Devilfish is safe. So that's if I go second. And if I go first, what I'm doing here is, more than anything, projecting a potential threat to my opponent, which is saying, please don't put anything in this pocket early in the game, or else you're going to get shot by a Breacher unit with a Cadre Fireblade in it. So this Scout 6 enhancement gives me the ability to tell my opponent, yes, I can go 24 inches and dump stuff into this ruin if I really want to, or I can easily attack this part of your this part of your deployment, which is typically a pretty good spot to stage units. Same thing with over here. So it's just acting as a deterrent over on this side of the table, but eventually wants to threaten this pocket without getting shot back from this angle. This Riptide is deployed really aggressively. We're definitely using the Scout 6 on this guy. And where he's going to end up is right in this pocket right here. And we're just going to make sure, it's a little sticky, but we're going to make sure this guy gets cover right over this part. Because our opponent likely has a unit that can come shoot it, but because of the 4-pin invul, it's very unlikely that a single shooting unit in the game, outside of like a big knight with like 6 Melta shots, is actually going to be able to take out that Riptide. What we've done is we've covered this angle here with a bunch of redundancy from Seeker Missiles from this guy, Seeker Missiles from this guy, and then this Hammerhead being able to actually step in this ruin and shoot. The reason this Hammerhead is down this long firing lane is because it can both threaten here and here. I would say, in general, I really like, oh boy, the Hammerheads being the ones threatening the longest firing angles on the table. The reason being is the one big drawback of an Iron Hammerhead is it does have a blast gun. It doesn't have access to fall back and shoot like Riptides do, so I want him to be at the angles shooting my opponent from the farthest part away from the table, with the ability to kind of move up the table later on in the game to start interacting with them in a more meaningful way then. But I do want it to be, in general, pretty far away from the fight so that I don't have the risk of it not being able to activate. Okay, and then the last thing I wanted to talk about was reserves. So on layout 1, especially on Crucible Battle, it gets really stuck up here really quickly. And one thing that we really want to do is be able to threaten this part of my opponent's side of the table. So we want to put stuff in strategic reserve so we could potentially bring stuff off here. If my opponent decides that he does want to screen out this part of the table, he has to have units, like let's do this right now. So if he wants to screen out a Riptide showing up, let's say right here, he has to be within 9 inches here, which is right on this side of the table, which means he can get shot from this part of our side of the table. So it essentially is forcing our opponent to put stuff out in the open for us to pick up, or else we can show up with a Riptide right here and just start blasting into that really nice staging area of his. Same thing goes for this Ion Hammerhead. We can bring it down this line, get shots over here, really threatens our opponent's ability to stage right here, which I found to be a really annoying place for my opponent to stage is on this side of the table. We can also even do the same with Breachers here if our opponent doesn't have more than a couple melee threats. So just something that I'm thinking about as I'm deploying. I'm kind of noticing, hey, like I probably should be putting more stuff in reserves. And then if we do end up going first, one huge advantage of having that stuff in reserves is we can then just scout these Pathfinders forward, just be outside of 9 of our opponent, and essentially just say this whole part of the table isn't moving at all, which means that we can basically probably show up with a Riptide like right here our next turn if we really want to. Same thing over here is if our opponent, again, doesn't put anything over here, we can just show up with a Riptide turn 2 and start activating with them. So really love this strategy of Darkstrider and the Devilfish because it allows me to be super aggressive with this unit if I really want to, or be super defensive and save them for later. Awesome. Let's go to layout 2. So I'm just going to call out right now one huge advantage that having Darkstrider and a Devilfish really gives us. Again, it gives us access to staging in areas of the table that we normally would not be able to. So, for example, I already scouted this guy, but this part of the table is essentially cursed if you're playing into a shooting army. Like, our opponent will not be able to stage here at all, or else he's just going to get shot by our entire army, essentially. But having a Scout 7 within this Devilfish from Darkstrider really allows us to get a foothold in this part of the table really early in the game, without our opponent being able to do a ton about it, which we'd otherwise just not have any access to. Like, they likely are not staging anything here unless it has like an 18-inch lone op or it's just straight up a lone op. They're really not putting anything of substance over on that side of the table. So what we've done here is on any search and destroy, or tipping point layout, we know that with a move of 7, we can get our Kroot onto the middle objective and our home objectives to sticky both. So again, this really doubles down on the aggressive line of, okay, we're going to sticky both objectives going first, then our Pathfinders are going to scout 7 and jail our opponent towards the middle, and we're going to ask him nicely, how is he going to get something onto the middle objective to unsticky it, or else we're going to keep scoring points. Now, if that does happen, that means we can also advance our breachers right into here. If we use this Pathfinder unit to screen out really aggressively. And now we have a Devilfish with breachers in a prime position to both threaten this staging rune and anything over here on this side of the table. So a very strong position to be, in my opinion. Next, it's going to give us, and actually we're going to move this Devilfish here, right on this side, but there's technically a line where our Riptide is currently getting shot, so with the Scout 6 enhancement, whoops, what we're going to be able to do is move this Riptide just into this spot right here. Now, the reason this is safe is, again, going back to the fact that our opponent can't really stage anything here, so they're unlikely to be able to shoot down this line. And if they are threatening that angle, we can then move the Riptide into a much more difficult angle right here to hit. Let me actually get rid of these deployment zones. Whoops. There we go. Because I believe there is a really nice spot here where we're really only getting shot at far. Yeah, so right there we're safe from that angle, and our opponent needs to be all the way up here to shoot us. So again, allows us to stage a Riptide in a pretty aggressive position with flexibility on where we want to go. And then this Devilfish, we're pretty happy to give up an angle to him because if he's shooting the Devilfish, then whatever is shooting it is automatically dead. It's typically not worth the 85 points the Devilfish is worth whatever he's shooting at it to get it killed. As you can see, we've got our stealth suits in those 3 areas of the table, again, ready to threaten different angles and get guides on them for the rest of our army. We've got piranhas ready to scout up into this pocket to hopefully force a commitment from our opponent. Same thing with this guy, he's just going to go here. And another thing that I do similar to with the stealth suits is when I'm deploying like this hammerhead, for example, there's not a ton of great spots for him, but he can still cover a couple angles, is I want to measure exactly 11 inches from the front of the model so that I know for a fact that even with the minimum advance, this hammerhead can get over this part, this rune here, and then can shoot down this angle. Or it moves 11 this way and can then shoot in the middle or shoot down this line. So again, a very strong strategy, I think, in my mind, is just like a fundamental thing that I do all the time is looking for those minimum advances, just so I'm not playing any games. I would say like anything over a 3-up even, I'd probably just prefer to use the auto advance 6 to make sure I'm getting the angle or I'm denying that person's primary, etc. Awesome. And then last but not least, we've got layout 6 here. So in this particular layout, there's not a ton of great options for both scouting our Devilfish and finding a place where it's safe, as well as the Pathfinders are getting a ton of value out of their infiltrate. So instead what I did was I started Darkstrider with his Pathfinder unit so that he gives them the +1 to wound. It also doubles as a nice little defensive buffer for our natural expansion here. With that 12-inch no-go zone that he has, it means that it's a lot more difficult for our opponent to get aggressive on this side of the table. We've deployed our Riptide right here, and one like small thing as far as deployment is concerned that I always like to think about is because this Kroot unit has Scouts 7, I really don't want them taking up any premium real estate where like our Riptide can stage, for example. So in this example, now that we have our Riptide taking up the best real estate possible, that the Kroot aren't taking themselves, I can actually get out of this firing line because of that. And then if I go first, these Kroot just scout into this little pocket, put some of them up here, some of them go here, and we're totally fine. And if we go first, we scout into the center because we've blocked off that 9 inches with these stealth suits over here. On this side of the table, we've pre-measured this angle, so we know that our opponent can't get to that turn 1, so we're in a fairly aggressive spot with the Riptides. This hammerhead, again, we want to be in like a fairly defensive posture just outside of this angle right here. And then this Devilfish, I believe, is in it is this in this angle down the pipe. So if our opponent does want to stand in this ruin, then we can get shots back at him pretty easily. And as you can see, right, we're not getting the value out of the Scout 6 enhancement in this particular matchup, but what we have done here is gotten in a fairly aggressive position with our advanced and shooting units, in a way that if we do go first, we can still get pretty aggressive, from both Kroot sticking in the middle to getting a bunch of assets up on this side of the table. I think that's really what we want to do here, is get Riptides here, get Devilfish back there, and then start moving up the table where we're kind of covered by this ruin right here. Start threatening our opponent's natural expansion. We do have a Devilfish in reserves just because, again, I think we want our opponent to be stretched thin a little bit from screening both Vespid in its backfield and screening a rapid ingressing Devilfish. I think a rapid ingressing Devilfish is super strong, especially on Search and Destroy, where our opponent has to move out to screen those areas of the table as opposed to actually deploying there. Because we have access to the auto advance 6, we can go 18 inches and then dump our guys out, which gives us a lot of flexibility and a lot of threat range from that unit as well. That's going to do it for today's video, guys. Just wanted to walk through kind of how I approach deployment with Montka, specifically how I leverage Darkstrider, the Strike Swiftly enhancement, to get some little advantages here and there with Montka specifically. I did notice that over 50% of the folks that are watching these videos aren't subscribed. We're almost at 3,000 subscribers, so would really appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. Give me a like, comment down below anything that you thought I could have done better, maybe some stuff that I missed, or things that you like seeing here. And that'll do it for today's video. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.